इस राग द्वेष की वशीभूत होने उचित नहीं है, वैसे दोनों मोक्ष के शत्रु है. He describes two activities, my dear friend. That which is called rag and that which is called dvesh. दोनों शत्रु है. He says both of them, they become the enemy of those who are in quest or in the search of God. And repulsions. They are swayed by what they like and what they dislike. If something, that is what I was explaining to you before. If it is something that someone likes and it is taken away, what happens? What happens? One gets disappointed. One feels pain. One feels the inability to move on or to continue with one's life. But if something is happy and something gives pleasure, one feels that is one's entire world. But one says, this is false. That which you experience is only temporary. And that is what the mind is saying. The mind is making you believe that, oh yes, I love this. I cannot do without this. But he says beyond that, the one who can go beyond that, he says enjoyment is a source of happiness, and pain, of course, is a source of detachment. And because of that, we get surrounded. Out of that attraction, oh my dear friends, what is born? When I get $20, I want 100. When I get 100, I want 1,000. Why bother to get 1,000 when I can get 10,000? When 10,000 isn't satisfying to me, why not 100,000? And so we continue. Isn't that true? We reach easily, we become, we are not satisfied. That is the effect of attraction. Out of that attraction is born desires. One desire opens up another, another leads to another, another leads to another, and so we keep going and going. And with every desire that is entertained, my dear friends, for sensuous objects, with every desire, one dwells deeper and deeper and deeper into this world. That's not the problem. The problem comes when the desire won't get fulfilled. When the desire isn't fulfilled, there is when the difficulty comes. So Bhagavan says that is what is called rag. That attraction that holds all beings together. Out of that attraction, that is how you know you like, right? When you see someone or you see something and you develop an attraction towards it, then you develop liking towards it, not so? See the boys watching men laughing? Yeah? So he says like this, that what happens? It becomes trapped. That person becomes trapped by entertaining one desire after another, after another. Bhagavan says very beautifully, Hari Om Sri Paramatmane Namo Namaha Nejat Kama Bhavina Lobhardam Tur Boji Vyaspihita Nityam Dharma Sukha Dukhe Tvanitya Jiva Nitya Nitudasya Tvanityaha Sri Krishna Govinda Hare Murari Hematara Yanavasudeva Sri Krishna Govinda Hare Murari Hematara Yanavasudeva Arjunvacha Athakena Prayoktam Yam Papam Charta Purusha Anichannapi Varshneyo Baladivayo Gita. Arjun then asks once again, he says, Bhagavan explains that of Rag and Desha, and he explains to him that one's own duty, O Arjun, performed halfway is even better. Last night, as I was mentioning to you, is better performed than another's, with full reverence. So So he says, Arjun asks him, he says, Lord, I want you to explain to me. Tell me. Arjun ने कहा, हे कृष्ण, पाप कर्म करने ही इच्छा न रहने पर भी जैसे कोई बलपूर्वक करता हूँ, ऐसे मनुष्य पाप करने में प्रवृत्त हो जाते हैं। हे भगवान, इस पाप कर्म में प्रवृत्त करने वाले कौन हैं? अचिन्नपि वार्ष्णोय बलादिव नियोजितः। He says, O Bhagwan, impaired by what in this world does a human being commit? Sin. What causes a human being to commit sin in this world, O Bhagwan? And not committed knowingly, but committed unknowingly. As if driven by some force, that person commits sin again and again. Is it because of the product? Is it the karma of the person that causes that person to commit sin or to experience that? Is it you, O Bhagwan? Are you the cause of someone committing sin again and again and again? This is what Arjun is beginning to ask him. He says, O Bhagwan, tell me, what causes one to develop sinful ways in this world? And then Bhagwan says very beautifully, Kamish Krodhesh Rajoguna Samubha Mahashano Mahapapma Buddhi Namiham Vedinam Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudeva Rangade Chunariya Rangade Chunariya Rangade Sham piya mure rangade The last one I will tell you about. He asked, "Kaun kajal se thali?" What is more, or what is darker actually? We still make kajal for Diwali? Do we? You sure? Or we buy the what you call it? See? Eyeliner? Mascara. These days, boys don't all wear mascara. Sometimes at school, when I'm at school, we have to check the boys for that as well. We check their fingernails, we check their uniform, which consists of their belt and their shoes and their socks. We ensure that their hairstyle is neatly, it says well-groomed. There are many definitions to the word well-groomed. And we also check for mascara. So he says, "Kaun kajal se thali?" That what is darker than the kajal? I should say, what is darker than the mascara? Kajal se thali. And beautifully he also gives the answer. Paap bhumi se bhari, krodha gana se tej hai, or the kalank kajal se thali. A stain. A stain, my dear friends, that results out of a sinful act that leaves with it a kalank. It leaves with it, my dear friends, a kalank which is very difficult to wash off. So Bhagavan says very beautifully that what causes this sin? Kam ek krodha ek rajo gun samud bhava. That kam means desires. And krodha, all under the influence of that guna that is known as rajoguna. That the quality of rajas, my dear friends, it encourages us to feel. There are three gunas, the sattva, the rajas, and the guna. Bhagavan, of course, explains of the prakriti and the gunas in there. But he says the meaning quality behind rajoguna is attraction to something. And whenever rajoguna is predominant, then we have desires. Kam is those desires. Ek krodha ek. Kam is one, and krodha is the other. They go hand in hand. And he begins to explain that, O Arjun, out of that raga and dvesh that I was telling you about, that out of that attraction is born many desires. And those desires are what causes one to go. That desire, O Arjun, springs up from the attraction, and that causes one to commit again and again, again and again, many different types of sin. How does that happen, my dear friends? When the desire is born, and you have to fulfill that desire, very few times we stop to consider to attain that desire, whether we go with what is prescribed in the scriptures of dharma, or we go against dharma. And he says, my dear Arjun, from the time one entertains that desire, and that desire, in order to fulfill that, they begin to go against dharma and against what I have ordained in the scriptures, then one begins to inherit sin. So the desire which is born from the attraction, from the raga, that is what causes the sin. Then he says, ek krodha, not only the desire, but also the anger. In one beautiful chapter he tells you, if the desire comes and you cannot attain the desire quickly enough, don't you get angry? You begin to get angry, especially if the neighbor is faster than you. Who will qualify one as our enemy? We begin to compete. And when one person attains quicker than the other, And that desire is not being realized by us. We become filled with anger. And that anger, he says, Mahashano Mahapapam Buddhi Yonami Vaidinam. It is that anger, that desire, of course, he begins to say. And why does he stress so much on that, my dear friends? Because he says, Pundit of course performs Havan with the fire. Abritam Janamintena Yanino Nivedina Kamarupina Kampena Dushpurna. He says when you pour ghee into the fire will keep reaching and it will keep going. You can bring 2 bottles of ghee, the fire will still absorb all of that and it will keep going. If you bring a 3rd bottle, it will also take that and it will keep going. So there is no end to the amount of ghee that can be poured into a fire. Because the fire has an appetite and it will continue to accept and accept. He says so too is a human being. The desires become like that fire. One after the other we will pour into the fire. One after the other. Is not so, my dear friends? When one opens, just when I was explaining to you, why bother to get 100 when we can get 1,000? Why aim for 1,000 when I can make 10,000? Why aim for 10,000 when I can get 100? So as the desire grows, he says a foolish person can think by pleasing their desires again and again and again that they will be able to conquer them. That is never so. That is never ever so, my dear friends. You can never conquer the desires by trying to fulfill all of them. Pundit and I talk all the time. And those were one of the things that we were extremely. Don't say I will enjoy. And when I'm done here, I'm done. And then next time we go, say, well, only one time again. After that, I'm done. And after that, we say, well, you know, two are making sense, maybe do 3. And after 3, 4. And after 4, oh gosh, nobody watching. We could do it all the time. Not so, my dear friends. It grows and it grows. This is what he's explaining. He says, oh, Arjun, that desire, when it goes, Mahapapama. That is why he uses the term Mahapapama. It is the cause of the greatest of sins. But he also speaks of a good desire, my dear friends. That which is pervaded by Supagun. He says, oh, Arjun, not all desire. These desires of Rajagun. That is why in the sloka he says, Rajo Guna Samudbhava. Rajo Guna Samudbhava. It means it is the Amla or the lake of all the Rajagun. The desires stem from that. But what about when one has the desire to pray? That is also a desire. When you want to come to Ramayana and Puja, not because the person invites you, but because you want to listen to Bhagwan's name. Because you have the devotion inside of you. He said, that type of desire, O Arjun, when that type of desire is entertained and it is fulfilled, do you know what happens? It causes the sadhak, it causes the devotee to move closer to me. But when the material desire is entertained, my dear friends, it causes us, Bhagwan is of one end. If you cut a piece of pipe or a narrow cylinder, and just how the 2 ends never meet. Have you ever seen the 2 ends of a pipe, a cylinder meet? I'm going to use a pipe because we say we will bend it. But if I have a piece of steel post and I cut both ends and it is cylindrical, and the ends of those pipes ever meet, do the 2 sides of the road ever meet? Do the banks of a river ever meet? They don't. So he says very beautifully that, O Arjun, knowing such, impelled by such, a man, of course, should always try to conquer those. And of course, he said, just as smoke covers a fire and eventually outs it, so too, and just as dirt covers a mirror, so too, when the desires grow too much, my dear friends, because of the attraction of the sensual things in this world, it covers the knowledge of Bhagwan. And when that knowledge of Bhagwan is covered, the knowledge means, of course, the devotion within us, then that life, that one becomes impelled only to perform sinful things in this world. Abritam, but he says, O Arjun, Haryom Sri Paramatmane Namo Namaha Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Yamamritya Devihidam, but where is the seat of all of these desires, my dear friends? He says very beautifully, the senses, Indriyani, Mano means the mind, Buddhir means the intellect. Adhishtan Muchate, Adhish means it is the place. It is the place of all of these. And he uses a wonderful example as we are almost to the end, I will share with you. There was once a king who ruled over a country. That country had a capital, just like us. So we have a capital. The king, of course, had a prime minister, a PM, and a deputy prime minister. The country was broken into 10 different parts. So if you want to say like how we have counties in Trinidad, I don't know if that still exists, but 9 counties. The country was broken down into 10 different parts, and each part was called a district, and each district also had someone, a elected leader of that district. So you have the king, you have the prime minister, or the Mahamantri as we call it, the main minister. Then there is one who is second below the minister. You have the 10 persons in charge of the 10 divisions of the country, and then you have the country itself. So one day a gentleman came, and he wanted to obtain a license, of course, to ply his trade. So he went first of all to the districts, and he met all of the heads of the districts. In the example, they are called magistrates, but we know differently as magistrate. But he met the local heads of the district, the 10 of them. So the 10 of them agreed. He paid a hefty bribe, you know. He paid a hefty sum to bribe them to get a license. So they said, yes, no problem, but you have to go meet our boss. Their boss, of course, was the deputy head minister, or if you want to say the deputy prime minister. So when they took them to him, he said, yes, no problem. But there's only so much I can do. I have to take you higher. I have to take you to the Mahamantri, the minister who is above me. So he says, yes, okay. So they went to the Mahamantri. The Mahamantri, now, poor fellow, he say anything that them fellows say below, I will say the same thing. So offering his enticements and so forth to them, they all decided, yes, they will go. But now, the charmer, the person who was trying to obtain the license, he wanted a license to practice over to trade over the entire state, the whole country. One district can be given by one person, but this person wants a district over the whole, to trade over the, fly his trade over the entire state. So they all had a meeting, and they asked the charmer, what will you offer as an enticement to the king? You have to win him over. When you win him over, then and only then you will be able to attain everything. So they plotted together, and they went to the king. And they made him, my dear friends, an offer which he could not refuse. They made him an offer which he could not refuse. They all met in the city, the capital, like our capital is Plasir, and they made him an offer which he could not refuse. And my dear friends, he gave up everything. So the entire state was now run by our good friend the charmer offering enticements. Bhagwan is explaining to Arjun, the king is the Jivatma. That is the soul. The Mahamantri, that is the intellect. Buddhiyasya. That becomes the intellect. The person who is just underneath the Mahamantri, Mano, he becomes the mind. The 10 leaders of the 10 states are the 10 senses. And the 10 states, of course, becomes the 10 places. The capital of that city is our heart. And the charm, my dear friends, who offers the enticement is our desires. You see what happens when the desires become too strong? Even the soul gets drawn into that desire. Loses his way because the mind is controlled. Desire overcomes the mind. Desire overcomes the intellect. And eventually, it overcomes the soul. Bhagavan says that, O Arjun, the only way that must not take place, so that is, it's not possible for that to take place, Then he says what? Tasmata Indrayado Niyamya Bhartasha Pavaprambaje Hinam Jnana Vijnana Nashanam. The only way to do that, my dear friends, is to control the senses. And how do we control? How do we control the senses? Well, we pray for this call, this passion. In other words, we begin to cut away from the material things of this world. And how do we? Our attraction, we begin to control the attractions to things. We stop ourselves and say, listen, this is not for me. I have had too much. This is not the path that I want to walk. And he says, very beautiful, like doing again and again. What happens? Chanting the name of Bhagwan, immersing ourselves in prayer and in pujan, doing all of these things in such a way that the strength is going to come. The strength is going to come, my dear friends. And he says, when that happens, then, of course, his soul, which is like the king of the country, he is reminded of truly what he is. But whenever he becomes impaired by the Maya or impaired by the desire, that soul forgets truly its own identity. Never, my dear friends, Bhagavan is telling Arjun, never the yogi who is in search of God should allow that to happen. And he says the easiest way, Govinda Jai Jai, Gopal Jai Jai, Govinda Jai Jai, Gopal Jai. Means knowledge of Bhagwan in the formless as well as that which would be formed. Knowledge of the Lord through his different manifestations in this world. He says when one attains to that and one strives to that, knowledge and Vigyan, our Yagna, or when you perform Yagna and so forth, or you do puja, that falls, and you use a murti, that falls under Vigyan. He says once immerses oneself in that type of setting, then what happens? Desire has no place. Desire will never overtake such a sadhak. But as long as, my dear friends, he says, wherever that jnana and that vigyan is, desire will never find itself. But when one does not immerse oneself, that is why, my dear friends, there is no way that we can urge you or ask you to keep yourselves in these type of environments. To immerse yourself in yajna, in puja, in jap, in tap, in bhajan. When you do these things, my dear friends, it helps to keep away the desires away. It helps us to control the senses. And Bhagavan tells Arjun very beautifully that as long as jnana and vigyan is there, as long as there is knowledge and there is singing of God's name and immersing of one's mind within God, that desire will never find itself there. It's burnt away almost from there. And so Bhagavan says very beautifully, Hari Om Sri Paramat Eda Buddhi Param Buddhya Samstavatmatmana Jani Shakru Mahabaho Kamarupam दुरासदम् Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. O Arjun, knowing that which is even higher than the intellect, and keeping the mind under control, O Arjun, kill this enemy. Shatru Mahabahu Kamarupam Durasadam. Kill this enemy in the form of desire, O Arjun. Destroy the enemy in the form of desire, and surely, O great Arjun, you will attain oneness with Bhagwan. Om Tat Sati Sri Bhagavad Suphanishtattu Brahma Vidyayam Yoga Shastra Sri Krishna Sambar Karma Yoga Trijoyam Principal Sri Vrindavan Bihari Lal Ki Om Saki Sune Banjat Basuriyam Ve Saki Sune Banjat And also one who does human service to culture at our school and even in this country, my good friend, Mr. Maharaj. This evening, before I close and before I ask you to stand priority, fortunate we are to have many noble Brahmins amongst us. Amongst them, of course, from the Krishna Ramali, one who is, very near, very dear to each and every one of us, I think. One who has had an extensive career as a past principal of the school, and one, of course, who now devotes his time and service in another way, rendering yet again human service to the organization and, of course, each and every one of us. I will ask him, of course, to say a few words before we close this evening.
Auravad Vyas ji. Namastute Vyasa Vishaka Buddhe Pulara Vindayat Patra Netra Yena Tvaya Bharatayla Prajvalito Maya Jnana Pradipa. Salutations to the Vyas. At the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita, the invocation, this is one of the very many mantras given as salutations to Ved Vyas. And as I start there, let me say, Pundit, you have packaged your message extremely well. I cannot, the delivery, as I have said before, is perfect. So thank you. I think I speak on behalf of all of us here when I said his message has been very concise and very clear to us. So thank you, Panditji. I looked and I was taking in the beauty of this shrine, and I saw Life is Duty performing. It's on the wall there. And I thought, well, this is what this family is doing. On Sunday, Rupi was there. We talked a little about devotion. And I said, nobody cannot give that to you. And it's something that you have to deliver. And in this message that we received this evening from our learned Panditji, he clearly spells out some of the things we can do to achieve that. But what happens here with this family, they are rekindling in us. All of us have that desire for devotion. And when we come to occasions like this, it rekindles that spirit in us. It helps us to think again if we are falling back. As I would have said sometimes, on our journey to moksha. We will stumble, we will fall, but it's our duty to get up and progress again. And this family, they are doing a wonderful job. I would like to congratulate Mrs. Ramrup and her children for having, you know, if I could put it the other way around, she could have easily called the Pundit and sat in the confines of her home with her children and her immediate family and enjoyed the same blessing. But she thought it fit to share it with us. And for this we must be grateful, because I said it rekindles in all of us. You know, in the subconscious, you and I have one desire, and that is to meet with our Maker, whether we realize it or we don't realize it. But that is the desire we have, and that devotion can only come when we have devotees who are the propagators of Dharma, and they share that with us. So to this family, I want to say thank you. I cannot add more, because Panditji did not leave any room for me to say anything otherwise. But to say it's my pleasure to join with all of you and share the wonderful blessing and the wonderful message of Bhagavan Sri Krishna. Thank you, and thank you, Panditji.
My dear friends, also spare me 2 minutes. My good friend Pandit Yagna is here. Not very rare we meet, but when we do meet, it is indeed our blessing and our good fortune to have him grace us with our presence. And so, Pandit, whether you choose to sing a bhajan, to relay a blessing,